And so today, as we begin, I'm going to be sharing with you on the series that we talked about, the 6 behaviors of a powerful team. We're going to share with you some of the key principles. And if you guys remember last week, I was hounding each and every one of you to share your input on taking a test. So today we're going to begin by sharing some of those results. And we will finish by sharing one of the other results of the behaviors that we started talking about. So for those that remember or took the test, thank you, first of all, for doing that. I want to share with you just a couple quick things. Let's first start with the first behavior that we covered last week, which is that a powerful team begins the behavior of trust, because trust is basically the glue that holds everything together. So that's the first pillar, if you will, of the behaviors of a powerful team. Now, what you're seeing here is the results of over 23 people that took the test. And I'm going to share with you what this means and what the results are. And in essence, what I want you to take a look at here on the screen is this red line means that it is a major issue, something we need to address. This yellow line basically represents a score, if you will, that says that we need to work on things, but they're not as urgent. And then lastly, this green score means that we're achieving it, and therefore, we can continue to grow, but at least it's a very, very healthy environment. Now, the blue line that you see here, this blue line represents the average score that each and every one of you actually gave. And so if you'll see here, we basically scored on average just below the green line. So what does that tell us? It tells us that as a team, as a whole, we as individuals need to continue to work together towards building and establishing and earning trust from one another in order to break through that green line. And in the future, we're going to do a test again to see if over time we have been able to apply these 6 behaviors and if we see the results as a team. Now, the line that's like a double line that you see here, this line basically is each individual person, how they scored based on the test. And so what you'll see here is we actually have one person who actually didn't score some of these things, so therefore it looks like they died. So basically it's somebody who started the test but never officially finished it. So it's hard to really get that information, but we wanted to keep it there for honesty so that everybody can kind of see the results. So each one of you represents one of these numbers, and as you can see, for the most part, there's a couple of people that might be more critical to things, but you can see that as an average, we are definitely above the average line, but we definitely and certainly have room to improve on this particular behavior. So I'm gonna ask each and every one of you guys to really help me out in building trust with one another as a team and lifting each other up, because that's really what it comes down to if we want to grow and have a healthy environment. So all in all, room for improvement, which is okay. I think we're always going to be in a constant state of improving, but I figured what a visual for us to really identify where we are. We can't get better if we don't know where we are. So this is a really good visual input for us to identify where we are as far as trust is concerned. So now, what I would like to do is begin to introduce today the second key behavior that is critical to powerful teams. But before I really do, I want to share with you kind of a quick story that alludes to this very thing. In the early 1900s, there was a conflict going on in actually France, in Paris in particular. And basically what had happened was there was a lot of people in the city that were revolting and fighting back, and there was obviously a lot of complaints. And so during one of those many situations that took place that got hostile, this is now going back again, like I said, in the 19th century riots that took place in Paris in particular. There was actually a commander who talked to one of his leaders that was actually taking control of a specific radius, a block area in the city. And he told him, this is getting out of hand. And so I need you to take over and take control. But what I want you to do right now is order your men to fire at the rabble so that we can make an example of these people and stop these riots that are happening in Paris. So I want you to think about the weight of that command. Imagine that your commander tells you the situation has gotten so hostile that the only way that we feel we're going to be able to stop this conflict that is taking place is by taking drastic force that may very well kill thousands of people that are literally crying out because they're not happy about a situation going on. Imagine the weight on your shoulders as you have to now call upon other soldiers to align with you and kill their fellow citizens because it's going out of control. So what does this particular leader do? He ponders for a minute. He thinks about the weight of this situation that he's dealing with. And he begins to obey his commanding officer. And he says, "Men, I want you to ready your weapons, get on your knees and aim with your rifles towards the crowd of these people." And all of a sudden, this room gets silent as people begin to see these rifles facing at them. And all of a sudden, this leader stands up, pulls out his sword, and he draws the sword, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that I have been ordered to fire at the rabble. But as I look at this incredible crowd of people and I see these noble people, these people of honor and integrity, my fellow citizens, I've realized that I need to first give you the opportunity to get out of the crowd so that I can finish doing my job and shoot the rabble." Now, interestingly enough, within just a few minutes, every single person that was in that march, that was in the conflict itself, each one of those people walked away and stepped out. And so this leader had the privilege and honor of stopping an entire argument, an entire breakout of battle within Paris without shooting a single bullet. And that is really what I want to share with you today. It is that it is important that if we have a productive team, that we understand that one of the keys that we can leverage to success is conflict. Conflict is truly a tool that we can use to make ourselves better. And in fact, I would even argue that you cannot progress and reach the next level without dealing with conflict first. And so what I'd like to do is to read to you this particular definition that I saw that talks about conflict. Productive conflict is defined as an open exchange of conflicting or differing ideas in which parties feel equally heard, respected, and unafraid to avoid dissenting opinions for the purpose of reaching a high, mutually comfortable resolution. And guys, you need to understand that as we begin to unite and as we begin to build trust and as we're embarking on this next level, we are going to encounter conflict. And it is important for us to understand that it's how we behave with the conflict that determines if this breaks up the trust and unity, or if this builds the trust, if it builds momentum for our success. So here's an amazing quote that I like. In great teams, conflict becomes productive. And so again, the point that I want to make here, guys, is this is what separates the best teams from the mediocre teams. The difference in being able to turn conflict into something that is productive. That is the aim as our team begins to grow, that we need to identify, we need to learn from, and we need to work together to make that and achieve it. So first, why don't we talk about the elephant in the room? What productive conflict is not? Productive conflict is literally important for us to understand what it is not. It is the opposite of productive conflict, is described as an argument, especially a repetitive one without resolution, that leaves both parties feeling angrier and more frustrated. So understand that if you're dealing with conflict and you're still frustrated and you haven't dealt with it and come up with a solution, that is the opposite of productive conflict. And so for us to become productive, we have to understand that when it comes to conflict, there is unproductive conflict and there is productive conflict. And if you haven't made a resolution, you're probably in the unproductive conflict zone. And understand that this happens not only in business, it happens in our relationships, it happens with our children, with our family members, and even our spouses. So I really believe that if we want to turn the tide on this, and we want to use conflict as leverage, we need to fully understand what it is and what it is not. So why should we care about conflict? Let me give you this basic visual here. Because productive conflict moves teams forward, drives successful businesses in the right direction, and creates solutions to big problems. It even helps us improve our personal lives by allowing us to confront each other in a constructive way without the need for insults and any bad blood. Guys, it is important for us, if we want to grow and go to that next level, that we embrace conflict, but that we use it as a leverage to get us to that next level. So how exactly do we go about being productive in conflict? And I'll be honest with you, as I was doing my research and I was doing some studies on the subject, what I found is that some of the top most successful companies have put processes in place in their company to create a safe environment so that when there's conflict, the team members can collaborate and work through those issues. So this isn't something new. This is something that has existed, and some of the most successful companies are using it, one of their secret weapons, to perfect their business, to make their business more successful, and to bring a bond and a unity between a team that only happens after conflict is dealt with. So let me share with you some of those principles that I learned doing my study. So the very first thing that I want you to understand is that if you want to leverage conflict, you have to first face it. You cannot suppress it. So face it, don't suppress it. Most people avoid conflict and suppress the issue, which produces literally nothing when you don't deal with it. In fact, what it does produce is bitterness, resentment, lack of trust, the complete opposite of what we want to accomplish. So it is not safe, it is not healthy for each and every one of us to let these things build up and never deal with it. Because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is you end up slowly creating a silo where you separate yourself from your peers, and then the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you never accomplish anything. And so it's imperative that when there is an issue or there's a broken piece in the system, or if you're dealing with some type of conflict with somebody in your team, you have to be able and willing to face it. Now, the difference is you have to be willing to face these issues with a can-do attitude, because that's ultimately what's going to help you to transform the situation. So understand that if you're going to face it, you can't look at it from a negative perspective. The moment you have an issue or you have a conflict, you have to face it, but you have to understand that you have to see the problem for what it is. It is an opportunity. If you don't look at it with a can-do attitude, what ends up happening is you're going to face someone and you're going to have a combat situation that's ultimately going to make matters worse and be unproductive. So the very first thing we need to do is put those goggles on with a perception that tells us that, hey, I'm going to face this problem because it is affecting me or affecting my team or affecting our productivity. And I understand now that this problem is now an opportunity and we can do something about it. That's where that first step and that first mentality has to come in. Because if you don't face that issue or you suppress it, you already know what's going to happen. It's only going to get worse. So again, I want to encourage everybody within the sound of my voice and in our team to be aware of the situations that you deal with. Notate it. Write down exactly what the problem is so that you can identify what that conflict really is. You'll be amazed how many times we literally let something disappear and we try to avoid it and we try not to deal with it. And what ends up happening is we get angry and emotional so that by the time we do confront somebody, we get aggressive and nothing happens. If anything, we have discord. But you know what I found is whenever there's a conflict, and I even tried this recently because we're working on something in our home and I was getting very frustrated. And I don't have a problem with conflict. That's my problem. Sometimes I fly off the handle too quickly because I feel confident in uncomfortable situations. And what I found is by taking just 2 minutes to say, what is frustrating? Why am I frustrated? What is this conflict really about? And just by writing down what it is, you can start to identify what the actual problem is. And sometimes you'll find that the problem is you. And so again, I want to encourage each and every one of you to make sure that we are all open in this team to face conflict, again, with a can-do attitude. But before you sit down and talk to anybody else or deal with the person that you're having the conflict with, you want to make sure that you write down what is causing the conflict, what is the issue, so that you have a clear picture of whether it's just your emotions or if there's something broken in the system that we can improve upon as a team. The very next thing that I want to encourage each and every one of you to do is before you start going into an argument with somebody or saying, you're the problem, this is the issue we're having, find common ground. And that is really important because if you have to understand something, guys, as a team, we are one team. So remember that no matter what the conflict is, you are all on the same team and should frame the focus of that argument or that situation of conflict on working together to find a solution. The problem is the enemy, not you or not the peer next to you that you're about to talk to. I think that is really important. If we want to have productive conflict, you need to find the common ground with the person that you're dealing with. Find the areas where you are in agreement, where you are in alignment, and separate that person from the problem and engage that person to be a part of working with you to find the solution. Remember, guys, a lot of times we're so busy trying to cover ourselves, or we're angry because something hurt our productivity and we want to blame somebody else. And what happens is we end up taking it out on somebody else instead of really reflecting and seeing where could we have been better in that situation. So by finding common ground, you're able to build that rapport with your team member. You're able to say, listen, I know there's something wrong with the system because I've had 3 closings not go as planned. So obviously what we do have in common is the fact that you get paid and I get paid when we close this deal. What we do have in common, guys, is the fact that we want to make sure that we do the good business, that we're closing good transactions. What I do see is that you care about what you do, which is the same thing I care about what I do. And so therefore, the problem can't be us. Let's find the problem and let's work together towards a resolution. You see, what happens a lot of times is if you are able to take the common ground approach, that philosophy of saying, as I face the problem, I'm going to include this person, I'm going to find my common ground, and together we're going to find the solution, is that you'll find quickly when you do that, is that you instantly eliminate any pointing fingers, which is the next point that I want to talk about. You literally stop the hostility immediately, and you create an environment where both or 3 parties or whoever's involved in the conflict can now share their ideas, share their opinions, and feel safe about doing so they can come to a resolution, which leads to this next point. When you have a team and you're breaking down the situation and you're trying to come up with an idea, avoid pointing fingers. It is so easy sometimes to say, well, so-and-so didn't do their job properly. This is why we're having this issue. But really, is that the issue? There might be something within the system that is broken that could have prevented the issue in the first place. There could have been situations where maybe the person that's responsible for that role didn't fully understand the role. They didn't have the experience or the knowledge, and maybe the solution is training, not beating them down and saying that they're incompetent. And so again, part of what you want to do when you're building the common ground, when you're facing the situation, is avoid pointing the finger at somebody else. Okay, that's really important, guys. When sharing your opinions or feelings, don't point your fingers at your peer. Instead, involve them in how this issue is affecting the productivity, and share with collaboration on how together we can make it better. You will be amazed at how many times having a dialogue where I'm not blaming, for example, Luis, we have an issue and a problem. I could easily say, well, Luis, you dropped the ball on me, man. And because of that, now we're having this issue that's costing us tens of thousands of dollars. So think about it. And let's even pretend that it was his problem.
But it was your fault.
It was your fault, right? So all of a sudden we're arguing over this, right? And so I'm now upset with Luis. I'm losing my trust in him because he just lost me $10,000. So just think about all of a sudden this conflict that takes place within me. And if I don't face it, first of all, it's going to build up on me. And long-term, it's not good. If I talk to Luis and say, hey, Luis, you suck. You did this. How dare you? How do you think Luis is going to feel? He's going to feel like I attacked him. But if I say, hey, Luis, here's what I feel. I feel that we could have made better decisions, but unfortunately, we didn't. And this cost us $10,000. So why don't you and I get together, and instead of pointing the finger at each other, let's take ownership. I have a partial responsibility in this loss. And would you agree, Luis, you have a partial responsibility in this loss too? Do you think he's going to be a lot more open to saying, you know what, you're right. I did kind of make a mistake. I did drop the ball. Okay, great. Now that we've both taken ownership, Luis, I'm sorry that I did my role and I didn't do it right. Why don't you and I sit down, let's start identifying what this problem is, and let's get together and put our heads together. Let's find that common ground, and let's start attacking this problem together so that we don't lose $10,000 next month again. Do you guys see the visual in that transition? That's the most important thing. I can't suppress it, otherwise it will get worse long-term. But if I face it, I can't point the finger or go against Luis, because at the end of the day, then my trust and his trust is going to be diminished, and it's ultimately going to hurt us. So the best way I can do is find common ground, take ownership of my mistake, and begin to point the finger at the problem so that he and I now are at the same place working together to achieve the goal of fixing this problem so that in the future, it doesn't impact us again. Hopefully you guys can virtually see what I'm talking about. This is so important, because if you don't do that, I am telling you right now that nothing will ever grow to the next level. So again, this is a way to take that conflict and make it productive. The next piece, and I think is really important, it goes really well with this, is identify agreement points. So there might be some areas where maybe Luis and I don't necessarily agree. Even if we talked about a solution, he has a completely different perspective than I do, and therefore there might be even more conflict. So what I want to do is, instead of saying, well, Luis, that's a dumb idea, I don't agree with you, I'm back to square one, right? We're back to the argument, right? But what I can do is say, look, why don't we look at the areas that we do agree on? Instead of focusing on the areas that we don't agree with right now, let's look at the agreement points that we both have and that we can share to take those positives and begin to bring unity. Because once we bring unity, we can counter anything. So let me give you an example with the same situation with Luis. So we start talking, we start sharing our ideas, and one of those ideas that Luis shares with me isn't necessarily what I agree with. However, I can look back at the rest of the argument and I can say, well, I do agree with you that, Luis, this is urgent. I do agree that this idea makes a lot of sense. I don't necessarily agree with this, but instead of saying, oh, this is a horrible idea, say, well, how can we improve on that idea? Here's what I think. Is there any way that we can together come up with the rest of the solution? And you'll be amazed that those agreement points begin an alliance where now Luis knows that he's safe with me. And even when I don't agree with him on certain things, we're still working through the good stuff that we agree on to find the common ground for us to be able to find the solution where we need to be. And so guys, again, I want to reiterate that instead of focusing on the areas that you do not agree with, look for the agreement points that you both share and take those positives to bring unity and then encourage your teammate to help tackle the disagreement together. Guys, I am telling you, that is one of the most effective ways. And as I was researching this, I cannot even tell you how many business owners, partners that were running, billion-dollar businesses, this is how they tackle major issues. And I'm not talking about, hey, this deal didn't close. We're talking about $150 million deals going south and then being able to use that conflict to create a productive situation so that the next billion-dollar deal goes the way it should. And so, guys, this is really important. So make sure you face it, find the common ground, avoid pointing your fingers at somebody, and begin to identify the agreement points for that solution. And then, of course, work together to find the right solution together that you can implement. The reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is because as we grow and as we scale, we're expanding departments, we're increasing our activities, and therefore there are gonna be moments where either we drop the ball or we have a system that wasn't built to handle that kind of volume or that kind of transaction. So it is imperative that when you see it fall, instead of saying, well, it is what it is, go find the solution. Get in a room or a virtual conference call with the other team member that you're dealing with that's having that issue and say, guys, how do we come up with a solution? Let's work together. You'll be amazed at what you'll accomplish and how much more will get done if we can leverage conflict and make it productive into a business. The last portion, I think this is a formula that I really believe all of this is tied under. Respectful collaboration equals resolution. I'll say it again. Respectful collaboration equals a resolution. So instead of instead of preparing for a battle, which sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I'm good at conflict sometimes. So a lot of times, if I am not happy with a situation, I have to literally be consciously aware that I'm not preparing a dissertation or almost a court hearing where I'm going to attack somebody and prove why they suck or why they were wrong. The moment I do that, I actually lose power. Do you know why? Because even if I can debate with the best of them in the world, at the end of the day, after I'd said my piece and I've proven that I was more prepared and I proved that I won the argument, at the end of the day, there is no resolution. And that's really what we need to look at, guys, is if we want to look at a conflict and make it productive, at the end of the conflict, there must be productive resolution. Otherwise, nothing happened. We failed as a team. And so again, instead of preparing for a battle, collaborate with respect, and you will see how quickly you can find a resolution, new ideas developed through unity. It is so important, guys, that you do that. Understand, guys, that, and this is one of the things that I have found with several people in our team in the past, and so I'm just going to call this out. This is another action. They're what I call 1 foot in, 1 foot out, okay? So they want to represent our brand. They know we're credible. They're happy to work with us. When things are going good, they love being with us. They love talking about positive things. They're representing our brand. The moment there's a conflict with a client, the moment there's a situation where the client rubs back and gives friction and says, whoa, 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 why am I not getting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever that problem is, whether we're right or we're wrong, what that person does is instead of going back to the team, protecting the teammates, and then going back to the team to say, hey guys, here's what I heard. Why don't we try to tackle this together? What they do is instantly they side with the customer and they turn around and start blaming the company. The moment they do that, they literally their power, because you know what's interesting? That customer that they turned around and they went against their teammates and they're blaming departments or blaming about lack of commitment, what they have done is they've lost their support that had their back in the first place. And when that customer who's fickle goes somewhere else, they also lost the customer too. So here they are alone in an island by themselves when they're the ones who created the discord. So again, respectful collaboration equals resolution. So even if you have a customer who shares with you a concern, a problem, an issue, and even if they have a valid point, never attack your team, because that is also an indirect way of suppressing the problem with your team and siding with the customer, which never works for you. Make sure that you take that information, you collaborate with your teammates, discuss the solution, and then you address the situation individually with a united decision on how that problem will be dealt with. You will be amazed how many times your team members will have your back and will even help you to deal with the situation so that you're not by yourself. So again, guys, I want to reiterate this. Face the situation, don't suppress it. Find common ground with the team members that you're dealing with to make this a solution. So that way you guys are on the same page and you're facing, it's us against the conflict. It's us against the conflict, not us against each other. Avoid pointing the finger, even if somebody's responsible for the situation. If you take ownership and share how you feel and how this impacted you, they will automatically take ownership and also be a part of helping you create the solution. Identify agreement points. Even when you're coming up with solutions, guys, again, I will reiterate, look at what you do agree on and you'll find that you have more that you agree on than what you disagree on. And if you can find that agreement point, then together you can then have a respectful collaboration that leads to resolution in what we do. So I'll leave it with one note. If hostility exists, bring another peer. What do I mean by that? Sometimes you might say, well, Rick, this is all great, I can do this, but there's just this one person in my team that I'm afraid to talk to because I'm afraid they're gonna bite my head off, or they're gonna argue with me, or they're gonna do whatever. And you know what? Sometimes that happens, right? So if that is the case, instead of dismissing the situation altogether, bring somebody else in the team that can be a witness with you so that you bring that situation in such a diplomatic way that together you find a resolution. And if for whatever reason nothing happens, well, then that's where you have a chain of command. You go back to leadership and say, hey, I've tried to bring a solution. These have been my proposals. This has been an issue. Then we can deal with that situation and make sure that either we have harmony or we start dealing with the situation head on to make sure that our team is safe, because the team has to have a safe environment. So again, guys, if there's hostility with that person, if you're intimidated by that person, but you know that you can find a solution, bring somebody else with you. And again, use the same principles that I just talked about. Now, to finish this up, I wanted to give you guys a visual. We already took a test. Once again, as you know, this is our conflict results. And what's interesting is, again, red line is no bueno. The yellow line represents kind of the middle of the road. Green, it represents here that it's a very healthy environment that can grow. And what you'll notice is that our averages actually are above average in conflict, which is a really good sign. But it shouldn't let us up on getting better at this. So again, I want to challenge all of you, conflict properly. If there's a problem with your systems, if there's an issue with a client or expectations, deal with the conflict in unity. And trust me, we'll get better and better and better. And I'll guarantee you that in many of these issues, we can refine, recalibrate, and perfect our processes so that we can be a better company all around and serve our customers better, serve our passive investors better, and serve everyone in our team. So again, keep that in mind. And I'll end it with this. This is so important. 10% of conflict is due to the difference of opinion, and 90% is due to the delivery and tone of your voice. So remember, if we want to create a positive situation out of conflict, be very, very well aware of how you deliver that message and in what tone you deliver it. Because you can cross the line and disrespect somebody and make it worse, and it'll backfire on you. But if you are seasoned, if you share with love, if you share with respect, and you collaborate, you guys, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish. We can literally turn every stumbling block into a stepping stone for the next level. So with that said, guys, I'm going to open it up to any comments or questions you have, and then we will wrap it up for the week. Go ahead, guys.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
All right. The whole time I had this quote in my head, and I figured I would share it. And the quote is, "Honest conflict is better than dishonest harmony." And I felt like that would greatly apply to this this talk that we just had.
Absolutely. That's a
So
really good quote, Javi.
I figured I'd share that, and that's all.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Thank you. Send that over to me, bro. I like that quote.
You don't say much, Javi. When you do, bless your heart, man.
That was a great quote.
Yeah. You know,
Awesome.
I'm sure Luis might have had something to say. I got three things, man, and I won't make this long, brother. First of all, thank you for soldiering through this morning. I know you're hurting, but also for always being willing to share your vulnerabilities. I can't say enough about you for that. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
You know, part of it, as we talk about this discussion, one of the things that I've seen take place, being the company historian that I am, we've got a really great dynamic taking place now. There's a couple of things that I've noticed. Number one, we're not referring to our newest teammates and newest family as MRB anymore. They're us.
Mm-hmm.
We're all HIS,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool to see that finally happen. And we knew it would take some time. Cohesion, I think, as a unit now that we're streamlined or condensed as a group, I really see that solidifying a great deal. Damien, Christoph out of Celis and Ani, I mean, I love the way you guys are taking care of each other. That's really big to get through the grind, and to help us push to that next level for all of us, really. Luis, thank you, Luis, for the impact that you've had, man. It's just, I can't put a weight on it, dude. It's been amazing what's taken place. You know, our ability to call a spade is kind of a have to. And we were talking about dynamic just now. And I think part of one of those things you're referring to is the conversation between Ani and Monique. Monique gets so used to getting beat up and challenged by all of us and saying, why can't we do this? Why can't we do this? That when Ani wanted to at least tell her how we were trying to stand up for us, they were both saying the same things, but there was like an argument festering, right? So it was kind of interesting. And then to watch you, Rick, of course, how we actually let that subside, and then everybody's on the same page. But that idea of learning how to communicate with one another is important. It really gets simple. It's understanding, you know, the type of individual that we're speaking to. We have an engineer. We can't talk to them in a certain way. You can't get to resonate with somebody unless you're on their level. They're not going to hear the message that you're trying to share. So it's the onus on us is to understand each other, the type of individuals that we are, and then to learn that way to best communicate with one another. And ultimately, man, it just, we've taken shape. And I think over this last decade, man, this is a great unit. I think that we're forming here, and we're really moving forward quickly together as a whole. And I really do believe that if we keep this pace up, man, the next year is going to be one heck of a ride for us all. So I thank you again, Rick, man, for your leadership, and Luis, for guiding the boat the right way, or the arc. Last week was any indication of what's about to happen to us all. Man, put your seatbelts on and get ready. So,
absolutely.
Thanks for the share, bro.
Thank you, brother. No worries. Thank you. Awesome. Any other comments, questions?
I was just gonna say real quick that we're good. I like it personally, and I'll speak for myself, when people bring up an issue, but they bring up an issue and then they bring up proposed solutions. And I think we've talked about this several times before, where if everything seems perfect, then that's a problem. It shouldn't be, because we all have different ideas, we all know different things, and that should complement us to reach success. But if there is no conflict, then people are just avoiding it, because there should be conflict in order to grow to the next level. And not conflict in a disrespectful manner, but conflict so that changes are made in order to create improvement. But this improvement cannot just come from Rick or myself. This improvement has to come from ideas and proposals for solutions that we need to come together with. So feel free to reach out to us. Let's do it one-on-one. Let's avoid triangulation of conversations. And it's a good thing. I really enjoy having conversations that are honest and transparent about problems that we face, but then together we find solutions. Because if we just talk about the problem and that's it, we don't talk about potential solutions, then it's really pointless. So anyway, I wish you guys all a great week. Please keep everybody that's sick in your prayers. I think Monique is not feeling well, Javier, Rick as well, and a few others. So just take care and let's have a blessed week.
You guys have an amazing week. Let's conflict with productivity this week. All right, guys.
Excellent.
Roger that.
All right, take care.